Hey, so I want to say thank you and for coming back and welcome to the second part of the program. And we'll start the afternoon with a refreshing our Bodhisattva motivation, thinking that we're doing this program today for the benefit of ourselves and all sentient beings. So starting with that, let's do questions for a bit to see if anybody had some thoughts about this morning's program or anything they'd like for us to address, like for us to talk about. You can use your raise hand function. You can actually raise your hand, or you can type into chat. Yes, Ani.
Just a mundane question. Where was the donation site? I'm sorry, nothing.
Oh yeah. Hey, yeah. It probably was shared before you came into the room, if that's a thing. So let me get that for you. I'm very happy to do that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, stand by. ColumbusKTC.org. And here we go. Okay. Let's see if we can make the computer gods happy today. Usually it's kind of iffy.
No, okay. I don't have it yet. Did you post
it? No, it's coming.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, put it into chat just now.
Oh, there it is. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's just so nice.
Yes.
Let's put here.
And any other questions that people might have? Yes, Candy.
I'd like to see if you could address, like, I know you said you've been really, really busy. So let's say we have a really busy day and we're trying to stay present and conscious. Do you take breaks like pausing and stopping, or do you sense how your body is feeling as you're moving throughout your day? And let's say you're just physically moving from place to place and really busy. And just what your practice is when things are, busy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, what's really great, Candy, is that this is precisely where we're going next in the presentation. So you are right on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reserve the answer to that for right now, because we're going to go there next. Because I think that learning the skill of basic sitting meditation that we talked about just now, the skill of being able to notice and come back with a sense of gentleness, and then developing the awareness of how we're thinking and feeling through that first aid exercise. Those two skills together can help us move into the next phase of working with our feelings and working with with the techniques and skills. And so, yeah, I will hop into that topic next. So thank you for asking about that, because that's where we're heading. So I love it when that happens, actually, because that means that that my my 4-year degree in journalism did have a good effect. Because unanswered questions are in part 2. So, but anyway, thank you. I can't wait to get there. Leona May, thank you, Candy. Hey, Leona.
Fine to defer to the rest of the second talk, if this is also included. You keep saying the gentleness, and that is just such an important reminder. And every time you say it, I couldn't hear enough of that. Recently, just having where there's this sort of constant level of fear that has the water level right about here. Yeah. And then I go to work and 3 more things happen and I'm under, and then I'm like, why am I under? did my practice and I did my,
Yeah.
like, why am I under again? And so I'm mad at myself for being frightened, really. That's fair, like, so to be able to notice that I could make a different choice without being mad that I haven't already made that choice, like, without being mad at myself for being where I am, to go somewhere different, to go somewhere where we're more skillful, that I don't have to be mad at myself in order to move.
I really appreciate this because I think that this was one of the coolest things that, one of the coolest thoughts that I had as I was learning Dharma was that, oh, you mean like, I don't have to be mad at myself, or I don't have to be impatient with myself. And that I can only be where I am. I can't be somewhere else. And there was this one phrase that came up to me as I was working with some of my own things, where I said, you can't go back into the past and make yourself smarter. You can't project yourself back into the past and make yourself smarter at a point where you were not smarter. You can't, right? So we only are ever where we are. And so that was one thing. And then the other thing was when His Eminence Tai Sita Rinpoche, one of the great masters of the Karma Kagyu tradition of Buddhism, he said, I need for people to understand something. And he said, that is, we are always doing our best. Yes, of course, we can always improve. But he says it's very important for us to recognize that right now is where I am. And I can't be anywhere other than where I am right now. And so I am right now at this minute, I am the summation of everything that I've been, but I haven't gone into the next part of who I'm going to be. So it's like that, right? So in any case, that's as far as we can go and where we can be right now. So I really appreciated finding that out for myself. And sometimes I still give myself a hard time. But then Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught us some techniques that I'm going to teach next for how to make the shift, because it's learning new skills, and the gentleness, that underlying gentleness is really important to be able to gently move into the next phase. So thank you for that. I'm glad. Let's see. And then someone asked, is that, does that cover it for you, Leona May? Okay, great. And yay. And I see in chat, there's a message from Sherry. Hi, Sherry. It says, would you be kind enough to explain the parakeet analogy? Yes. If it weren't for that analogy, how would I explain stuff? But it occurred to me that that we make a mistake. And how do I explain the mistake we make about self? How do I explain the mistake we make about thoughts? And how do I explain that? And it just occurred to me that not every bird has self-awareness. I'm told by scientists that ravens and crows have self-awareness. So if they look at themselves in a mirror, they actually know it's their own reflection. But parakeets, apparently the size of their brain or whatever other factors make them a parakeet, anyhow, so they don't have self-awareness. And so what this means is when they look in the mirror, they think there's actually another bird behind the glass. And I've seen wild turkeys do this too, by the way. That they come to a glass window and they peck at the window because they think there's another bird behind the glass. And so this lack of self-awareness means they've completely bought into the illusion of what they see. They have an illusion that there's a bird here behind the glass and that they need to somehow respond to that bird. They could cuddle the bird, they could attack the bird, or they could be indifferent. which is a way of talking about the three mental poisons that the historical Buddha Shakyamuni talked about: ignorance, which is not knowing what to do, attachment, which is the cuddle, and the aversion, which is the attack. But in no case does the bird know that it is pecking at or cuddling its own reflection. And so what happens to us is that thoughts, feelings, and emotions bubble up into our sort of conscious mind. And when that thought, feeling, or emotion bubbles up, we instantly step away from it and think that it is not us, that something has arisen, something amazing has happened. And so because of that, we instantly think that what has arisen in our mind is other than the mind that's having that thought. We don't recognize that it's our thought. We think it's something special. And then we interact with it as though it were real. Like I have the thought, I am a bad person, therefore I really am a bad person. Or we think that person is my enemy. And then we think, yeah, that's right, that person is my enemy. And so what we end up doing is we end up having these sort of self-referential conversations, with imaginary people, thinking they're real. And those of you who know how much I love cartoons know that that there's a scene in Toy Story 2 where it's about toys that have self-awareness and that they're aware that they're toys and that they have like a life cycle, and that the children who own them will love them for a while and then set them aside or give them to another child. And they go through some angst, because of that. But there's one toy that had no self-awareness. He didn't know he was a toy. He actually thought he was a space ranger, and that others were enemies that he had to attack. So finally, at some point in the first movie, this space ranger gets told and gets convinced that he's actually just a toy, and that he now he has self-awareness, and it's like a moment of enlightenment for him. And then he goes to a toy store where there are unself-aware toys, and they attack him thinking that he is a space ranger. And then he says to the camera, "Was I ever that confused? Was I ever that, And the answer is yes, you were." So anyhow, long explanation for a short joke, but anyhow, so I don't know. Does that help at all? Yay. Does that help at all, Sherry? Okay, good. All right. Other things that people might want to talk about from this morning's session. Anybody? Did I see a hand? Just checking. Okay. All right. So, so if it's okay, then I think we'll go on to the next part. And by the way, I'm going to take a moment here to mute the microphones. Just so sounds from your house do not make it onto the recording. There are some sounds from your house you might want on the recording, but some you might not. Oh, yes, Ani, yes.
A very quick request. Could we for the next, during the next sessions, have a chance to do the meditation one more time, the one with breathing, feeling, and openness?
I can do that. Well, yeah, I appreciate that. Yep. Okay. All right. Good. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Very good. So, so Candy, in answer to your question, once we learn the basic practices of meditation, and we start to incorporate the skill of being able to return our attention when our attention wanders in meditation, maybe we start out, we'll use the breath as the example. Maybe we're starting out with awareness or attention to the breath. And what we get when that happens is a short period of attention that's followed by a period of mental wandering. And that our job is to notice the wandering, and then we can label it thinking. We can consciously let go of it, and then with gentleness, bring our attention back to the breath for a fresh start. And so being able to do that, we learn the skill of coming back with gentleness. So we learn two skills. We learn to notice, and we learn to drop and release and return, but we also learn to return with gentleness. And so there's two skills we're gaining there. And by doing this over and over again, we gradually develop the skill at being able to stop in the midst of something that's happening. At first, we're only good at this while we're on the meditation seat. At first, it seems to be we only become self-aware, we only gain that awareness of what we're thinking and feeling while we're on our seat, practicing the technique of watching the object or the breath. But then eventually what people tell me is that they begin to notice their thoughts, feelings, and emotions when they are not actively sitting in meditation. They'll notice them when they're having a discussion with someone, or they'll notice them when they're watching television, as people were talking about earlier, watching TV and becoming angry at what you see on the television screen. And at some point, we will become aware that this is how we are feeling. Let's say we're angry about some news item. And then we start to kind of say, yeah, that's a terrible thing. And, oh, that's awful. And those people are terrible. And those people are bad. And like, why are things so bad? And so it's almost like we take that story and then we work on it. We have a conversation with that story. The world is a terrible place and it's terrible. And why are things so bad? And then we sort of kind of go down the drain of habitual thinking, like, oh, things are all bad, or things are hopeless, or whatever. And we just kind of key into some negative habits of thinking, and then go down with those thoughts and feelings. And so the question is, how do we notice that we're going down the drain? How do we notice? And then what do we do? And I think the how do we notice is going to be different for each person, because for some people, they will begin to notice their thoughts, feelings, and emotions only when they bring on some pain. They bring on a painful feeling. That when there's pain involved, I always tell people, if you want to know when self-fixation is active, look for the places when you're in pain: emotional pain, mental pain, physical pain. That when are we being self-involved? When are we being self-fixated? It's when we feel some kind of pain. And so then that might give us the opportunity to do something that my friends in 12-step do. Again, I'm sorry to bring 12-step back into this, but it really, some of their slogans are so helpful. And here's one: HALT. The word HALT here stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And so what it is it's asking us to be aware of how we're feeling. And at first that's a little bit tough, because sometimes those feelings can feel like they're too much, and like we might automatically go down the drain if we recognize that we are hungry, angry, or lonely, or tired. But at first we will feel a little out of control. But if we can then key into the technique once we have halted, this is the signal for timeout in football, right? So, so if we can kind of put ourselves in a timeout, if we can call a halt to just whatever is happening at the moment, if we can disengage momentarily from what's going on and pay attention to and bring attention to our body and our mind and feel where in our body that pain is located. It could, if it's emotional pain, it could be in the body in tension, like maybe we're clenching our jaw, or maybe our shoulders have risen to right up around our neck. Maybe it's that moment when you do wake up in the middle of the night and your heart is going pitty pat. And at that moment, that's when it's probably smart to do the breathing, key into the breathing in for the count of 5, holding for the count of 5, and then breathing out for the count of 5, and doing that 3 times or 5 times. And then doing whatever part of the feeling exercise we can do, and then trying to allow those feelings to wash out of us and so on. And then putting our thoughts, feelings, and emotions through the gate and having them turn into the golden light of universal compassion. So I think that being able to stop is like that's the beginning of the change for us. That noticing and being able to stop, even if it's just momentarily, is like a gift, because then we can take one step back from the story that we are telling ourselves about this feeling. Like, I saw this thing on television and it made me angry. But if I feel that tension and I say, wait a minute, I'm going to take one step back from that. I'm going to step outside myself, my story, for just a moment, and see myself as a person who's feeling angry. And then have some compassion for that person who I am, who's feeling angry. And then practice some of these things to calm down. Now, people will say, well, that's all well and good, but what if what's happening to you is overwhelming? And the answer is, yes, sometimes we will be overwhelmed. And we may have to actually physically disengage from a situation, turn around and walk away. I have had to do this myself. When I was so angry about something that I needed to disengage, I needed to say to the person I was talking to, I'm really sorry, but I can't talk about this just now. I'm too angry. Let me come back to you. And the other person may still try to engage, but we have to say, this is probably not the healthiest time for this, but I promise you, we will come back. And sometimes we get lucky and the other person will allow us to come back. And that would be a gift to us and to them. They may not know that, but it can be a gift to ourselves. Now, I don't know if this is the answer to your question, Candy. Am I getting close to the answer to your question? And is there a piece left?
I think that's really, really good. And I took notes, and that's very helpful. And another thing that comes in for me is just, let's say if there's nothing really big at this moment, let's say you have to go grocery shopping and do 5 other things, but let's say you're not all caught up emotionally with everything, but you're trying to be present just with your busyness. So just with busyness, let's make it up, tone it down that much more. What you do to stay present with your busyness. Is that clear?
I'm going to give it a shot. And yes, it is. I think let's put it this way. I think it's clear. Let me give it a shot and see if I get close. Okay. Because I think I got it, but let's see. Okay. Thank you. So, what I have done, and I'm not always able to do this, is I actually think about that, taking the one step back. because taking the one step back is meaning that I step outside the story of my busyness. You know, because I could be thinking, oh, I have so much to do. Oh, I have so much to do. This is like too much. It's so much to do. And then I say, wait a minute. And then just back up. It really literally is taking one step back from the story of everything is awful. And then just breathing and becoming aware of breath. Even if I can't stop and do the timed or numbered breathing, is just take a step back and say, who is feeling this? That was an exercise that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught us. And I'm going to, he told us to ask the question, who or what is experiencing this? It's a question. It's just a question. Who is experiencing this busyness? Who is experiencing this difficulty? And then when you go to look for that person or being, there's nobody there. If you conceive that there is a person there and you say, well, it's me, obviously, who's busy, and it's me, obviously, who's experiencing this, then you have to then back up even one more step and say, but who's me? Where is this mind that is identified as me? What color is it? What shape is it? Where does it start? Where does it end? And when I back up from it to that extent, then there really is nothing there. I have to see that there is absolutely nothing there. And being able to do that sometimes makes it possible. The other thing that a person can do, and I've done this also, is there's a phrase that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught us when we were in retreat. He said, imagine that you have the illusory body of the deity of practice, and you are enacting benefit for sentient beings. In other words, if you're a Chenrezig practitioner, let's just say that. Let's say that you practice the mantra of Chenrezig and the visualization of Chenrezig, or Tara, or Medicine Buddha, and you are used to thinking of your body as being made of light and empty inside, because many people who learn these styles of Tibetan Buddhist Vajrayana meditation will have some experience of imagining that they have a body made of light and that it's empty inside, and that we have this, and then we look like Chenrezig. We have the body and the mind of Chenrezig. And so, in other words, if we can't look at the mind and see that the mind is not a thing, not a material thing, if we can't do that, and we're still looking at ourselves dualistically, I am me doing these things, well, then let's replace the idea of ordinary me doing ordinary things with the idea that I actually look like Chenrezig and I'm made of light and I'm benefiting, I'm using this illusory body to benefit beings. I call it dualism, but it's a bigger, better dualism. You know, it's kind of like, it's a value added dualism, you know, because it's closer to the reality of things than it is to the illusion of things. I mean, it is illusory, but it is closer to how things really are. Somebody asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche once, well, all of this visualization practice you guys do as Tibetan Buddhists, where you imagine that you're a Buddha, or you imagine that you're a bodhisattva and you're made of light and all that stuff, that's kind of dishonest. The guy actually said it that way. He said, that's kind of dishonest, you know? And because, you know, he says, I look in the mirror and I'm not a Buddha. And Rinpoche very simply said to him, well, look, you've made up who you think you are right now. So why couldn't you be a bodhisattva? Why couldn't you be a Buddha? You've already made up who you think you are. You made it up completely and totally. I mean, let's look at it. Let's be honest. We have all kinds of stuff that just like bubbles up from our mind, and there's no plot. You know, we may be the main character, but there's no plot. People tell me their dreams, you know, because I got the outfit on, right? And so they'll say, oh, Lama, let me tell you my dream. This happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, all in one dream. And I actually had a guy say this to me. He said, how many dreams can you have in a day? And I mean, in a night, how many dreams can you have in a night? And I said, how many thoughts can you have in the day? Because they're actually exactly the same and they make no sense. Okay, right? Let's have it, you know, you're having this dream, and in the dream, you're driving your car. And then the next thing you know, you're eating your lunch. And then the next thing you know, you see somebody who passed away a number of years ago and you're having a conversation with them. And you think, wow, that's wacky. That didn't make any sense. But then you get up, you get ready for work, you get in the car and you're driving your car. And then you think, what am I eating for lunch today? And then you can like, oh yeah, that's a delicious thing. I like that. And then suddenly you say, oh, I hear this song on the radio. My grandma loved that song. Oh, I miss my grandma. And it's really honestly exactly the same, right? We just did the exact same thing. Only we thought there was a plot because I was having these thoughts, but really they're not connected at all, except by the idea that I think I'm having them. That's the only connective tissue to this entire situation. And so since there's no plot, you know what I'm saying? So we have to put a plot to it. And we artificially put a plot to it right now saying, I am me, I have these habits, I have these likes and dislikes and so on and so forth. And so this is what we do. And so we replace that with the idea of I am a Buddha or I am a Bodhisattva. And yes, it's still illusory, but at least it's closer to the reality of who we are than this fictional idea of who we think we are. Is that helping there, Candy?
Yes, that's great. I love your stories. They just go right in there and they make me smile, and that's important. Thank you.
Hey, I'm telling you, we need it right now. We need it right now because everything is getting pretty serious here. I mean, it's getting pretty serious here. And so we have to find a way to help ourselves. And sometimes just taking that one step back and remembering something amusing, or taking that one step back and seeing kind of the silliness of it all and the absurdity of it all can sometimes actually help a little bit. So I hope that addresses, did that kind of help you with the strategies? And
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
oh yeah, no, you're welcome. And you know, I feel like we have to be patient with this process. We have to be patient with the fact that it's going to take a while to learn how to take that one step back. And we're going to have to be patient with the fact that we may not get it right a lot of the time. And that we're going to let a lot of things go and get away from us. And this is true also with the whole response of responding in anger to situations. Because right now we've really been turned upside down by the world. You know, the world is turned upside down on us. And I want to take a moment to explore the questions that were brought up earlier about by John and Elizabeth, who were talking about the difficulty of dealing with anger over situations of injustice and anger over situations of cruelty by other people. And see if there's something that, how is it going for you guys right now? John, is any of this helping with the anger situation? Because I think we're going to go one more step for you, but I want to see how you're doing right now.
It's going well. What I like to do is I use gratitude instead of anger. I substitute gratitude, because even though the 2 years was horrible and a lot of death and I got sick myself, I'm still here. So I have to look at it. There's a nun on Facebook, I don't know her name, but she was talking about perspective. You can look at the bad or you could look at the good. And she said, why not look at the good? So I've been trying to do that, but I still fall into anger. It's so easy to get angry.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to not that be my story. I want to flip it and be more positive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, is there anything in particular, and you don't have to share this if it's not comfortable. I mean, it's okay. Saying sorry is perfectly fine. But is there anything in particular that seems to really get to you quick?
At work, the lack of support.
Yeah, we're just people are not giving you, the support you need in order to be successful.
Because on TV they showed the commercials of the banging of the pans and everything, but that wasn't what it was like. It was at work. It was people dying. It was telling families they can't come in. It was being in the room, but also I'm grateful because I was able to be present with those patients. And I remember one patient had his light on all the time and the nurses were complaining. And I went in the room and I watched at the cooking channel with them, and we watched cookies for about half hour. And then after that, he wasn't on the light, he was fine. So I think it changed, it brought in like Buddhist stuff that I can't put together. I started to put stuff together like impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand impermanence now because I went through it. So I'm grateful on that side of it, but it's so easy to just get angry about stuff. And like with the shootings, why is it so easy to get a automatic weapon versus getting a fishing license? I don't understand why we're all connected. So it's just hard to put everything together.
Mm-hmm. I really do understand that. And I think that I really appreciate you sharing about that, because I feel like there's always one or two things that if these one or two things come into my, into my world, I will get angry like this, like thinking that somebody thinks I'm stupid. That's a toughie for me. And I have a hard time with that. And by the way, it happens every day, by the way. And so I've got to watch that. And I think that, I think the fact that you're aware of it and that you're aware of that thing that gets on your last raw nerve really fast, I think that's a really good thing. And it's also good that you've been able to work with some of the smaller issues, right? Some of the smaller things that irritate you through gratitude. You're able to deal with some of those smaller ones. And then that's kind of good, because that way you have success and you see that that technique does work. And I think that what we might have to do is we might have to understand something. Rinpoche said, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said something to us one time. He said, you may never be able to control the first moment of anger, that first flash of anger. It may happen no matter what. Boom. It's just going to boom. It's just going to hit you. But he said, slowly you will be able to get hold of the later moments of that anger and walk it back. You may not ever get that first moment, and it may just continue to happen, but you won't let it go so far. and you'll be able to get hold of it and to work with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like reactivity, not
Yes.
to react. And I've been working on that, but it's hard because, like you said, you get the story and you just feed it. You feed into it, and it's so easy. And
Mhm.
anger, I feel like when I'm angry, I'm in control, but I'm really not. I'm
Exactly.
losing. So I understand all that, but I keep doing it.
Yeah, I know, but the fact that you're doing it more and enjoying it less is, I'm joking around by that. But I mean, you notice that you're doing it, but you're enjoying it less. It's doing less for you. I think that's kind of good, because that's another 12-step slogan that I like. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then you're ready for recovery. And so I feel like that's happening to all of us. And so, but I do want you to not feel too bad that you're going to have these things where, there's that flash of anger. It's okay. You'll get it. You'll get it, because what you're doing is you're noticing, which is number one. And number two, you're starting to be able to apply strategies. And I'm going to give another strategy in a minute or so that's going to be helpful. So, but I just wanted to see how we were doing with that so far.
We're good.
And so Elizabeth, how's this going for you?
Well, I was quite helped by the 3-part meditation that we did.
Yeah.
And afterward, I felt sadness. I mean, there's things that I know in my head from past experiences, like when I'm caught in the anger, I know that I have fear and sadness underneath it that will come pretty soon, probably. I know that people who hurt other people that they're really afraid also. I know those things. And most of the time I can kind of hold on to those, but there's a number of things happening lately that I think they trigger very deep
Yes.
traumas from my childhood. Actually, I feel teary
Yeah.
even talking about this, but I think that those things are very hard for me to work through. They're from early abuse, early exposure to the Holocaust in a Jewish family, much too young to have been exposed to that. And there's rising anti-Semitism and the Great Replacement theory that Jews are supposedly directing. I think it's when these things trigger me from my childhood that they're hardest for me to keep working through in the way we do in this tradition, or even in the psychological ways.
It's really true. And I feel like the more we learn and the more techniques we learn and the more strategies we learn, the more we'll feel like we have tools in our toolkit, places to go, things to do when these feelings hit. And we may still be knocked over by them, like standing in a wave and it just knocks you over. And that's still going to happen, but we'll be able to recover more quickly. And I think that if you look at where you are with these things now, as opposed to where you were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that I'm hoping that you will find that you have more resources at your disposal now than you had then, even if all you have at your disposal now is a deeper understanding of why you feel the way you feel. But yeah, we'll keep adding techniques.
And I just want to say, Lama Kathy, that the way that you interact with us and treat us, is no matter what words no matter what words from the tradition were coming out of your mouth. The way that you say to each person, oh, I appreciate you sharing that, or, you know, these are, you are really being caring to us. And that's so helpful in itself. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. And what's amazing is that we now have the capacity to do that for each other also. You know what I'm saying? It's like now we have a little bit of distance from some of the things we've gone through. We've have a little distance now. So we know that we can back up and take that one step back, right? Noticing how we feel, halt, and take one step back, and then apply gratitude or apply understanding, like understanding that people who are mean, you know, the bumper sticker. And I think I don't know if it was one of you guys made it for me, mean people are suffering, right? And, you know, so understanding that mean people are suffering, it's actually, that's a powerful thing. That we get to walk away from them, but they don't get to walk away from themselves. You know, there's some sadness in that. But I appreciate the fact that that you're feeling supported in this environment where we are, and that's why we create these environments for ourselves, in person, on Zoom, wherever we are. We create these environments so that we can engage positively and constructively. So thank you for bringing your sincerity to this, because that's how it works. So, and I want to say one more thing, and that is, Julie, how you doing? You know, because you also expressed, you know, a lot of difficulty with having just gone through a very terrible experience. How are you doing? Are you doing okay?
Thank you. I'm okay now. I for a few days, it sort of, I was seeing stars, you know, one of those things, and sort of crawled up in a ball in front of my favorite TV show that I clung to, which, you know, helped me just distract. And, you know, I didn't know. I'm much better now. I'm coming back. So I was just I think it was an ego probably thing, where I was disappointed that, you know, I couldn't just come back, let go of it all, know that it's illusion. And, you know, it just felt so, when it's an employer versus a person, to me, it just felt so, I don't know, much more powerful. And so I think I was, the root of it was that I was disappointed in myself for not rebounding, you know, but I did. I came back, and I thank you so much. I saw this, you know, this teaching happening today. And so I really appreciate you, and don't know what I would do without you, quite frankly. So thank you so much. You and the doctor and everybody, thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. And you know, we're all so human, right? We're all so absolutely human, and in all of our messiness, we're all human, and we all have these positive aspects to ourselves that we can slowly learn how to draw on. Right now, they may not seem like, it might seem that we can't access them, but slowly we're going to be able to get past that and be able to access them more rapidly. And excuse me, and hopefully that it will get a little quicker, that we can rebound. And if you look at how you rebounded in this situation and how you would have been a few weeks or months or years ago, you're in a different place with it now than you were then. So at least that part is there. Kippakartha Rinpoche used to say, you know, we have to give ourselves some credit because we're not where we were, and that if we look at the progress we've already made And we recognize that we don't have to stop making progress. We can continue to make progress, and that we will continue to make progress. And because the story is continuing, and you're not the person you were 5 minutes ago. I know that's weird, but it's super true. We're not even the person we were 5 minutes ago. So it's moving. And if we move with it, then slowly we'll be able to make those changes. Well, I want to talk about something. Thank you. And I want to talk about the positive aspects, because there's a quotation that meant a lot to me, and it was from a teaching by the previous Kalu Rinpoche. And he said, the journey to enlightenment is not a journey from point A to point B. It's actually staying at point A and exchanging whatever is negative for something that's positive. Again, it's not, the journey to enlightenment is like not going from point A to point B. It's remaining at point A and exchanging whatever is negative for what is positive. And it reminded me, that quotation helped me a lot, because it meant that I already did have a lot of skills, and what I needed to do was apply them. Okay. One of my other teachers said to me once, why is it that we give so much power to the negative and do not give equal power to the positive? And he said this in regard to a person who told me, I feel like I'm being attacked by demons, I feel like I'm, being attacked by demons, and I don't know what to do. Will you ask the Lama? And so I asked the Lama, and this was Barter Rinpoche. And I said, what does this young man do about these demons? And he said, I wonder why. He said, as human beings, we tend to give more power to the demons than we, and instead of giving them equal, instead of giving equal power, he didn't use this word, but what he meant was the angels. Okay. He says, why is it we believe in demons, but we don't believe in angels? Why do we give more power to the negative than to the positive when they actually both exist? And so, and then I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'll put these three statements together. This is what writers do. We have weird brains. And the answer, and still comes back down to Fred Rogers, who said, when bad things are happening, look to the helpers and see what they are doing and align yourself with them. And so all of these three statements, the journey to enlightenment is not a journey from A to B, but it's remaining at A and exchanging negative for positive. Second statement, why do we not give equal power to the good as we do to the bad? And then finally, look to the helpers when things are going wrong, because they will be the examples that will help us. So you put these three things together, and what you get is mind training. So what I've written in chat, we have to make positive habits and be able to key into them when we need them. Okay, and so this is why one of the best things that I ever learned in my life is mind training, which is called Lojong in Tibetan. Lo means mind, and Jong means training. So this is why we train in recognizing the positive and bringing it to the forefront of our life and the forefront of our thinking. And the golden light exercise that we talked about previously, this golden light exercise is a form of Lojong. Because what we're doing is we are rehearsing an understanding. We're rehearsing the knowledge that our minds and the thoughts that arise in our minds are like ocean and waves. The Buddha once compared the mind to an ocean. And he said our thoughts, feelings, and emotions are like the waves on top of that ocean. And a thought may come out of our mind and it could be an ugly thought, or it could be a beautiful thought, but it's still just a thought. Just as a wave could heave out of the ocean and look like a sea monster, or it could look like a swan, and it's still just water. And so having that sense that our mind is moving and that at its base, every negative thought has the potential to change and be something different. This is a powerful thing. Just as when we send those imaginary thoughts, feelings, and emotions through the gate, and on the other side of that gate, they turn into the golden light of universal love and compassion, and that we then imagine that washes over us and helps us, helps everyone in our house, in our neighborhood, in the world. We can even change criminals and horrible acting people into this golden light and impact them. The idea is that that is the world we're building for ourselves. We're rehearsing that when we allow those thoughts to go through and become something different. We're rehearsing the capacity to change things and to change them in a moment, like that telephone call that alerted us to a different world, the existence of a different world. As somebody said, please repeat, every negative thought has the potential to change into something different, because it's all just thought. It's all just mind. And so it can be either. It takes the shape of whatever habit it comes up in the context of. And that's something that you will learn when you study the Karma book by Trungpa Rinpoche. He says that. He says habits are really what we are building in this world and in this life. We're building habits, and that if we can create positive habits, whether it's gratitude. Thanks for mentioning gratitude, you guys. I know John mentioned it. I think Elizabeth mentioned it. There were a couple of other people who talked about gratitude. The attitude of gratitude, I know that comes to us from the 12-step tradition also, but developing it, even though it seems like it can be hollow sometimes or empty and not really full of oomph, not full of life, it's still better than going down the drain with something negative. And understanding that as long as our mind is operating, it has the potential to be good and to manifest something positive. And by rehearsing this positive change, the thoughts go through the gate. On the other side, they turn into imaginary golden light. It is the golden light of universal compassion, which talks about that potential always being present. And even the worst thought we could possibly ever have can turn into that. It's brilliant. And there are other exercises that are similar to this that we can do. And the one that has meant the most to me is the practice of sending and receiving, or Tonglen. The word sending refers to the giving of goodness. And the word receiving refers to the removal of suffering. And this is an imaginary exercise, an exercise of the imagination. that we can do as a way of training ourselves in a loving and compassionate response. And of course, you know, this is all good news because these techniques exist, but now I'm going to say something silly. It's a little bad news because we have to practice it. We can't just learn about it and say, that's enough. I learned a thing today. You know, I learned a thing today. Now, you may have learned a thing today, but you have to refresh it and rehearse it. And then it really becomes yours. You know, I love the whole idea. I've seen some entertainers on television do this, where they ask. There's a talk show host who used to ask his guests, "Tell me what poetry you know by heart." And then the guest would recall poems that they had memorized as young adults or as children, and they still remembered them. It's like those poems were written on their heart. And so if we can do practices like sending and receiving or Tong Len, if we can do these practices and make that our baseline of interaction with the world, we're creating possibilities for us ourselves. So let's talk about that for a minute. Tong means to send. And so in this exercise of Tong Len, we use our imagination. We're sitting in meditation and we imagine. As we breathe out, we imagine instead of thoughts, feelings, and emotions going through a gate and becoming golden light, we imagine that that as we breathe out, our breath is a brilliant light, or is all the goodness that we possess. We just imagine from the get-go, we don't have to send it through a gate first, you know. We imagine that this goodness flows out of us and goes to the entirety of the universe. In his description of this, my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, says it's like sunlight spilling out over the horizon, you know, over the landscape. When the sun rises above the horizon, it spills out and floods the entire world. And he said, just make it natural like that. You breathe out and you give all this goodness. He said, but then again, he said, when you breathe in, imagine that you are taking and drawing in all that is painful and negative in the world and in other beings' hearts and minds. And he said, you imagine that when you breathe in, he said, you take all of this in, you imagine that you remove it. It's like you take it away from them. They don't have to feel it anymore. You're taking it. I'll take that for you. You know, it's like, here. And he said, and what you do, he said, when all of this negativity and suffering and so forth comes to you, he said, it meets your pure motivation. The purity of your motivation of wishing to benefit others. Just the purity of that motivation, he said, causes all of that imaginary suffering to dissolve into nothing and disappear. And then with the next out breath, you give goodness away again. And with the next in-breath, you remove the suffering. It meets your pure motivation. All of the suffering dissolves into nothing and disappears. And that you do this, he said, for a short period of time. And when people ask me, how short is short? I say, well, depends on you, but it's probably best to start out with a very short period of time, maybe a minute or two. And that's pretty easy if you have a set of these prayer beads that you wear as a wrist, you know, beads or whatever. If you have a set of these, or if you don't have a set of wrist beads, if you've got a longer set, you can mark off with your with your fingers, a quarter of that, like maybe 25 of the 100 beads on a mala. And you can use that as your timer. Out breath, in breath, out breath, and then you pull a bead toward you. In breath, out breath, pull a bead, and so forth. And that's about 2 minutes, depending on respiration rate. It is about 2 minutes. And then what does he tell you to do at the end? This is, to me, there are two things about this particular technique that are powerful. One of them is that when the suffering comes to us, it's imaginary suffering, first of all. So it's not really going to hurt us. But then he goes the extra step of saying it meets our pure motivation, and all of that suffering disappears and dissolves down into nothing. So then he said, when you have done as much of the practice as you're going to do, he said, just let go of the visualization. Just let it go. I think about, a kite on a string that just goes away. You release the string and it just floats away. So you let go of the visualization that you're doing and you just allow it to disappear, and then let your mind rest. And Rinpoche said, you let it rest in a place where there's no you, no sentient beings, no act of saving sentient beings, no act of there's no you, there's no even you meditating. It's just let all of that go. He said, and let your mind just rest in its own natural state, which will only last, 1 second, 2 seconds, and so on. But doing that exercise for just a couple of minutes and doing it every day, a 2-minute or 3-minute exercise is extremely simple to do. And yet it bears great benefit because it becomes the sort of baseline of your interaction with the world, because you've rehearsed this interaction with the world that's kind and loving and compassionate, and that you've just rehearsed this, and you do it every day over and over and over again. And by doing this over and over and over again, you create this environment within yourself that allows you to do those three things: exchanging negative for positive. I forgot the second one, but the third one was look to the helpers. Oh yeah, giving the positive as much power as you give the negative. And then the other one, which is this idea of looking to the helpers. Again, it's all about being able to place your mind in a positive state when you need to be able to do that. So anyhow, so what do you think, guys? Questions? Yes, Leona May.
Hi, what you're reminding me of is how, like someone was asking about busyness, and for me, it gets away from me. It starts to feel like it's the negativity starts to have its own pull, and it sort of gets away from me. And all of these things are like little speed bumps. And if I can just pause, that it doesn't have to be 20 minutes alone in my room with my cushion and candle, that I can have just a moment in the bathroom by myself to breathe. I can stop that runaway train feeling. And so everything you're saying is just so intensely practical, and I can reach for it. And what you're also reminding me of is that doing my regular practice really is giving me a foundation, because the place that I go is when I sort of lose my grip and I'm just overcome with the despair. I feel like I've failed. I feel like I've accomplished nothing. I feel like I have no practice. I have no nothing. And that's not real.
It's
So-
not real. No.
So
it's
those are
not.
all just super helpful reminders.
Let that thought go through the gate,
Right,
right? Let it
Right.
go through the gate,
right.
that
And
thought that
yeah,
I have
that I
failed.
I don't have to go home to bed for a week. I can just go to the bathroom for a minute.
Been there, understand that. I totally get that. Thank you for that, Leonie May. And Linda is asking, can we practice a short session? Yes, we have two things to practice, and we may not have time to practice them both. Ani, what I'm going to do, because we have two things to practice, we've got the Tonglen to practice and then the exercise to practice. So I'm going to start tomorrow morning with the exercise, a repeat of the first aid exercise, and then we'll do a little Tonglen now. But I mean, after we take a few more questions, I want to see if anybody else has comments or thoughts about this. Comments, thoughts? Okay, just checking. Oh, here's one. Yes, hey there, Julie.
Hello, I just placed a question in the comments or in the chat there. Just about expanding on the idea of giving more power to the positive, and if you could expand on that at all, or
Yeah. Oh,
Not to-
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. In fact, I'm looking for the question here and it's like, oh, sorry about that. Okay. I mean, yeah, I love it that we're all so human, right? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think this comes back to remembering again. It just comes back to remembering again. And so like, I use the Chenrezig practice as an example of this, because if we practice any of the mantra practices on a regular basis, whether it's Tara or Chenrezig or whatever, we gain the capacity to remember that we are Chenrezig. And that we can be, I mean, I jokingly call it, we can have a Chenrezig moment, poof, just like that. We can, we can be washing the dishes, right? We can be washing the dishes, or changing a bandage, if, for those of you in nursing, we can just be doing an ordinary thing. And then suddenly, poof, we have the body of Chenrezig or Tara, and we're made of light, and we can remember who we are at our root, at our basis. And this is kind of one of the ways I would practice the idea of remembering and giving power to the positive. That's kind of what I would do, would be to make use of what we've already learned, which is, for those of us who have already learned mantra meditation, and we can just, key into that. And I would do it randomly if I were you, just random, random. I'm Chenrezig. Oh my gosh, really? Cool. And just, I would do that as like a challenge exercise. I mean, it's really funny. Okay, so I'm going to make a joke. Somebody gave me this like smartwatch. I would never have bought it for myself, because it's like, I would have said I would not need a smartwatch. But now that I have one, I'm having a lot of fun with it, because it reminds me that I have to get up and walk around. It's like like Fitbits are like this, I guess. And they can like remind you that, hey, by the way, you've been sitting on your tush for a long time and you need to get up and move around. And so I love that about the watch, right? But you can also set it to do other things, like go off from time to time and make a little chime. And when it makes a little chime, that would be and you can actually set it to go off randomly, random. And so randomly you get the chime and then you say, I'm Chenrezig, just for that, like 10 milliseconds, just like, and make a habit of giving some power to that. That's what I would mean by giving some power to the positive. I don't know, does that ring for you? Ding, ding, ding. Okay, she's giving it 2 thumbs up. Give it some power, right? And then it'll be there for you, right? So And there's even more, because there's another one I'll teach you tomorrow, but but this is, okay, that's a good start. Thank you for that. Other questions that people might have, or curiosities, or just something you want to share? Mhm. Okay, just checking. Okay. Well, then I guess we will, okay, yep, oh, here we go. We lost Ani. We had to get her back. There she is. Yeah. I love this modern world. First we're on the Zoom call, then we're off the Zoom call, then we're on the Zoom call. It's all good.
Ran out of battery.
Uh-oh. You look like you might actually be on twice. Let me double check. Because you got
Yes, I turned off the, sorry.
hey, that's all right. Hey, it just reminds us the illusory nature of all phenomena. So thank you for that. I have to tell you another story. Okay. And anybody on this call ever see or hear Kempo Sultram Jamso teach? Anybody on this call? Oh my gosh. He's retired from teaching now, but he really, he like lives in ultimate truth all the time. I mean, he's like there. He's an awakened being. So, but he's a real joker. He's a real joker. And so he says funny things sometimes. So like one time he says, people talk about miracles, that the miracles that Milarepa did, like there's some big deal. And he said, but you guys do miracles every day. He said, you get on an airplane and poof, you're someplace else. He says, isn't that miraculous? And then he said, and then he says, you walk into a different room and poof, you're someplace else. It's amazing. And what's really cool is there's a, he has a translator, and he would take this translator everywhere, and he would be teaching pretty much constantly, even when he was going about his daily business. And he would walk into a new environment, and he'd start and he'd chant something in Tibetan, da 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 da. So he'd be chanting this thing in Tibetan, and then he'd say to the translator, Ari, sing a song. And then his translator would sing that same 4 lines in English. And so the one that he did that is really still one of my favorites, he'd say, the song goes like this: Ema, which means wow, Ema, the phenomena of the 3 worlds of samsara, while not existing, they appear. How incredibly amazing. And so this is where he's saying, you walk from one room to another room and you're in a different place. Wow, it's like magic. And that's what he would say going into a new environment. While not existing, they appear. And by not existing, what he meant was they don't exist in the way we think they exist. They don't exist as permanent. They don't exist as real. They don't exist as unchanging, solid, real, unchanging. They don't really exist in the way we think they do. And thinking about that, isn't that amazing? And so there's another example of thinking of the positive and giving the positive as much power as we give the negative. So anyway, so those are 2 examples of that. He's like I say, I miss the fact that he's not teaching now, but boy, was he amazing. Really, really something else. Okay, let's do a little meditation. I am going to do the short Tonglen And this short practice of Tonglen is taught in the book Dharma Paths by Kempo Kartha Rinpoche. And I'm putting that in chat right now. It's on pages 118 to 119 of this book. And you can pretty much just read a sentence or two and then close your eyes and visualize it. Read a sentence or two and close your eyes and visualize it. It's pretty easy to do. It's about 4 or 5 paragraphs long. It's pretty short. So it begins with the intention of benefiting others. So you just sit quietly for just a moment or two and let your attention settle on your breath coming in and going out. So we'll do that for just a minute or so. Okay, now thinking that all of the beings of the world are present with us, and you can see them all as a big crowd, or you can just imagine them being in their various places in the world. Just get the sense that you're in the presence of all beings. And form the wish to benefit them. And as you breathe out, you think that all of the goodness that you have and all the goodness there is flows out of you and goes with your breath out to all of the sentient beings everywhere, and it gives them joy and happiness. So let's just work with only the out breath for about a minute. Just on the out breath, thinking you give goodness to beings. Just allow the breath to be natural and think that you give goodness to beings with the out breath. And now we'll add the in-breath. As we breathe in, we think that we remove the suffering that beings have, whatever that suffering may be. We imagine that with the in-breath, we remove all of their suffering and that they become free of that suffering. And as that negativity and suffering comes to us, we imagine that it meets the purity of our motivation, our bodhisattva motivation. And all of that suffering dissolves into nothing and disappears. And so we'll add the awareness of the in-breath to our meditation. Out-breath giving goodness, in-breath removing suffering. Out-breath giving happiness, in-breath removing suffering. So we'll do that for about a minute. Okay, now we bring the meditation to a close by letting go of the visualization, recognizing there are no beings, no meditator, and just allow the mind to rest quietly in itself. Okay. That's a little bit of meditation. Yeah. Any thoughts that you'd like to share? Or questions or things you're curious about? Yes, Linda.
Thank you, Kathy Lama,
Uh,
or Lama Kathy. Sorry, I'm still sort of
yeah, sorry.
in
Things happen.
an ethereal place, I suppose. But yeah, so when I was visualizing receiving, a lot of different people started popping into my
Mhm.
visualization, like people that I actually haven't even seen or thought about for a long time. And so I was kind of curious about that. Is it, I don't know, I started with sort of visualizing a globe and the world and all of that. And then it just became individuals just coming at me. It was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You know, what I remember of working with Kempo Rinpoche on meditation and so forth and so on. And also Sita Rinpoche said the same thing. He said lots of things will come up as your mind relaxes, as your attention relaxes.
Mm.
He said, because in fact, Sita Rinpoche said you may see things or things may just arise to your understanding and things like that. He said lots of stuff can happen. He said, because what meditation does, he says, is it slows things down for you and you're not used to it. You know, we're used to really performing at a very high level with a lot of activity. And so when we disconnect from that a bit and things slow down, he said lots of stuff will come up. He said, your job is to continuously return your attention to the technique, which in this case would be to just, no matter who comes up in your mind, and no matter where they seem to be located, whether they're in the past or whatever, you just think that wherever they are, they're being benefited. And then just return to the technique of giving goodness on the out breath and removing suffering on the in breath. Because what I've noticed is that when our mind relaxes, things things will happen, and things that we haven't thought about for a very long time will just arise. And it's all part of the process of letting the mind relax and not being tense. So what the lamas have generally said is don't ascribe too much meaning to it. You know, it's just the sort of like the natural ebb and flow of things that come up. You know, it's what we do with them after they come up. So if a person comes up that you haven't seen for a while, say, oh, well, it's great you're here. Here, have some happiness, you know. And like, oh yeah, okay, I'll take that for you. I'll take that suffering for you. So I wouldn't put too much into it, because it's all part of what happens in the practice of calm abiding or shamatha. Because we're training our attention in shamatha. And when we do that, actually we become aware of more things. And at first we say, wow, I have more thoughts than before. But the fact of the matter is we've always had that many. We just never noticed them before. But I don't know if that helps at all, Linda, but.
No, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Appreciate it.
No, thank you for the question. And anybody else have a thought, a comment, and so forth? We are running over just a little bit, but we'll go for another 3 minutes or so. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. Hey, I'll tell you what, I've got 2 other things. I won't be able to talk about it today, but when we start tomorrow, I want to put attention a little bit on 2 of the things that were brought up really early in the process today. Ani asked about faith in the Dharma, and Sydney asked about being disconnected. And in a situation of not feeling connected. And I want to get to those. And so I'm making a note to myself to start with those tomorrow. And if you're able to be here, great. If not, we will have a recording for you. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that we will get to those tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Well then, believe it or not, we're at the end of our time for today, and that we will be back tomorrow at let's see if I get this right, 10 a.m. Pacific, which is 1 p.m. Eastern. And so we'll regroup at that time on this exact same Zoom channel. And we've got it for the whole weekend. So and in the meantime, if you have some opportunities to do some of these practices, definitely give them a try. And then we'll be seeing you tomorrow. I'll do a little dedication of merit. This is kind of a Buddhist thing where we gather together all the goodness of our being together today and dedicate it to the freedom of all beings from all forms of suffering. So I'll recite a short prayer in English. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing. from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
It's lovely to see all of you. Really, really lovely to see you. So,
Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.
okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, take care, everyone. All right. Thank you for the nice questions or the nice comments in the chat. Thank you.